what about the little girls that don't have anybody fighting for them? That's why I'm here. I'm here because as a man of God, I know that the Bible tells us to speak for the voiceless, the fatherless, and the widow. And that's why I'm here. And it's ridiculous for me to see I'm actually in the place where I became a man here in the state of Minnesota. Came here from Texas. It means so much to me. I'm at the school where my nieces go to school. And so it's all special. And who would I be if I wouldn't stand up for women? And so I'm calling all men across the state of Minnesota and across the nation to do what our Lord tells us to do and do what we know is right. And that's protect our girls.
Speaker Lisa Damath just recently became Speaker of the House in Minnesota. Congratulations. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It is an honor to serve as Speaker of the House here in Minnesota. The reason that I am here, and I thank you, Riley and Jack, for going before us and really leading the charge here in Minnesota. We have a bill that is going to be coming up, protecting girls' sports, something that shouldn't even have to be said at this point, but yet we do. That bill is about fairness and safety for our girls here in the state of Minnesota and beyond. We want to make sure that they compete, that they don't have opportunities stolen from them from a biological male. And we are in here to spread the word, and we really want people to get around us. This is a more than an 80% issue. People believe that it should be only biological girls in girls' sports, and that's what we really need to bring the awareness about.
Brian Wilson, welcome.
Great, thanks for having me. Yeah, I got involved in this when, well, first let me say I'm a father, I'm a girl dad, but I'm also an attorney, and I have sued Governor Walz quite a bit over.
Someone's got to do it.
God bless you.
And we sued over sports in the past. When he shut down all the sports during the pandemic, we saw firsthand what it meant for parents to not have their kids be able to do the things that kept their kids healthy, to keep their kids, doing the things that they love. And we saw the mental health effect that was, right? And so we sued over that. And it wasn't just about the lawsuits. That was being able to see when there is a movement that accompanies those lawsuits, when there are tens of thousands of people that come out, that's when you start to see a difference. And so that's why I'm involved here. I'm a coach, a father, I'm a girl dad. But I think when I see Governor Walz, Attorney General Ellison ignoring Title IX and claiming some other cover, some other obscure legal theory for why they get to do this to girls, that's wrong. And we need people to stand up across the state.
I think part of the goal of that, bringing in all the legalese and so forth, is to make people think that this is more complicated than it really is. And as you've said so many times, Riley, this is common sense. And this sort of just, I could see the seeds of this many years ago starting to germinate. But then there was like this tipping point, and I think it coincided with COVID, that all of these kids suddenly thought, I was born in the wrong body. And now some of these opportunists, I would say Leah Thomas, William Thomas, an opportunist you don't see it happening the other way. You don't see female swimmers going and competing against men.
No. And I wonder why.
But
if we point out the reason why, it makes us a bigot.
Yeah.
It is so true. It is overwhelming the amount of boys or men who are taking advantage of. I like how you use the word opportunist, of the women's category, the women's division, whether it's in sports or beyond. We're seeing men infiltrate into women's prisons. In California in recent weeks, there were over 1,400 men applied to be women to get into women's prisons. You know how many women applied to be men to get into men's prisons?
I'm thinking 0.
1, and she had 3 months left of her sentence.
Oh, okay.
So all that, same thing with sororities even. You see men joining sororities. It's happening at University of Wyoming. It's happening at University of Alabama. You do not see women infiltrating into men's fraternities. And even broader than that, how our language has been manipulated. You are seeing words like mother or woman or female. We saw Governor Evers of Wisconsin just in recent weeks in a over 1,000-page budget bill, which I know Speaker knows how this goes, tried to sneak in there, change the word mother to inseminated persons. Yeah. So before I could even continue reading, getting to the next sentence, I thought to myself, oh gosh, what are they going to call fathers? Of course, the counterpart would be like inseminators.
Yeah.
So I continue reading. No, they changed father to natural parent. All of that to reinforce the idea that there is across the board, whether it's in sports, which is the most visible, it is the most obvious, it's the most, it's like a South Park episode, or like a Babylon Bee headline, or like a SNL skit when SNL was still funny. All of that to reinforce the idea that there is a war on women across the board.
It's crazy to me. I think we all agree we can't believe we're having to litigate this, and it feels like the world is sort of spinning in the wrong direction. Lisa, Speaker, I want to get your take on why and what the opposition to this bill here in Minnesota is.
What you will hear with the opposition for this bill is that we are discriminating against those that maybe are transgender and want to come into these places, that we're not caring enough, that it's twisted in a way that we're judging people in any way. That is not the case at all. All we're trying to do is protect the girls that want to play sports and compete in sports. And it is such a misalignment of values, and that's not it at all. But when you have men coming into women's spaces, it is no longer safe for women, for girls. I'm a mom of 3 girls and a grandma of 1 girl. And when I look at that, the world is changing too fast that if we are not the ones to stand up and protect the spaces that are for girls, we are doing an injustice and we are damaging generations to come.
From a legal standpoint, what are the biggest hurdles? We're hearing Governor and Ellison saying, we're not going to abide by this executive order that the president just put into place. Well, schools could lose funding if they don't comply. Is that accurate?
Yeah, U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi's made clear that she is going to enforce this, and we're seeing it in a couple states now, and Minnesota is right on the target list. Our high school league came out and for really no reason, decided to be aggressive about this, decided to plant a flag in the ground. And they've been doing this for years. I mean, this has been a part of their agenda. And they're going to lose funding. I think we heard today up to $2 billion of education funds come to Minnesota. Somewhere north of $20 billion comes in overall funding. And the question is, how much of that funding is going to get stripped away? And that's, Governor Walz took us from an $18 billion surplus to what's going to be a $5 billion deficit. We can't afford to lose $2 billion more dollars.
Jack, I can't imagine this is the Minnesota that you remember. Like you said, the state where you came to become a man and really enjoy your career. This is not the Minnesota you recall, I'm thinking.
It's not. And just being here, I got to be honest, it's a little difficult for me to even grasp it all. Just because the place that I remember was so warm. People were about family. They were about faith. They loved the country. They loved their neighbor. And now I think it's being destroyed by such few people. And now you have an entire, party or whatever side you want to talk about that is willing to literally jeopardize the future of all these little kids to support immorality. You can't have a state, a town, a city, or a nation if you don't have some type of moral compass. Where is the moral compass when we're talking about this? We are literally giving the ability for people that 20 years ago, you would have said they needed to go get a mental health counseling. You would have put some of this thought, if you thought about somebody saying, I'm a girl, me, Jack, I'm a girl, I'm going to go and I'm going to play basketball against the girls. You would have put me into a mental health institution 20 years ago. Now we're talking about passing policies and bills to make that true across the board. We've lost our way. And if we don't spiritually get right, I believe it's because we've lost a fear of God in this country and in this state. And I think these children don't fear God. We're not teaching the 10 Commandments in our schools anymore. And we're getting away from the foundation that made Minnesota who they are. And that's what makes me sad.
Well, and the other thing is, people talk about believe the science. There's no clearer science than XXXY, that you are born with, chromosomes that make you female or male, that make you able to conceive a child or to inseminate a person. So it's really, I want to, before we forget about today's rally at the Capitol in Minnesota, Riley, someone said to me, I can't believe how much security Riley Gaines needs at these things. And I've talked to you about this at length in the past, but it is kind of crazy because it's a few people and then they somehow snowball the protests into something that to me outsizes what the actual sort of resistance is to this issue.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's how, and I'll say the left, again, this really shouldn't be a political issue. I think it definitely falls on party lines, again, in terms of elected representation and definitely how the media portrays this. But again, I don't think it's fair to say that all Democrats support this, because I would argue majority of Democrat voters do not support this. But again, in terms of elected representation and certainly how the media presents this, it is just amazing to me to see the vitriol that people like myself, I'll speak personally here, that I have been met with for saying something as simple as there are two sexes. And you can't change your sex. And each sex is deserving of equal opportunity, of privacy, and of safety. But I think it's incredibly telling when they resort to violence in many cases. I've been in many scenarios where, I've been physically attacked. I've had drinks poured on me. I've had, glass bottles thrown at me. I've had, I've been physically assaulted, where I've been punched in the face by these men wearing dresses, which fortunately for me, their punches don't hurt that bad. I've been held for ransom for up to, almost 5 hours in San Francisco,
Right.
where these protesters locked me in a room and demanded through the middle of the night that if I wanted to make it back home to see my family safely again, I had to pay them money. So I think it's telling when they resort to violence or these baseless name calling or petty personal attacks, because it shows you they don't have lived experience. They don't have the science. You mentioned follow the science. They don't have the rationale, the logic, the reasoning behind it. That's all they have is name calling. So once you realize that, it's easier for you to take it on. Now it just rolls right off my back.
Right. That's the thing. It's if they don't have an argument, they will resort to name calling. And that's pretty much what's been going on. Speaker, when you're at the Capitol and when you're engaging with the opposition, but what are you seeing? Is it fervent? Are they being pressured by constituents? The people who are against this very simple common sense bill, what is the thread of their resistance?
I don't believe that the people that are against or are going to be against this bill are hearing from their constituents. I think they are hearing from a very small number of louder voices that want this agenda, not just for Minnesota, but for our country. Mm-hmm. And that is who they're choosing to listen to. I think what we saw out of the last election was that people are now bold enough to say, I am conservative in the way that I think about things, and I will stand up for that and those values. This should not be a Republican or a Democrat issue. People should be able to stand up, vote how they choose for the safety and fairness of girls and to support girls. But there's that fear from the other party that doesn't allow them, or they're not bold enough to actually do it. That's what we've got to get past. This is for a legacy and generations to come. And if people aren't going to rise up, pass a bill that is being offered right now to ensure the protection, again, we are losing for generations to come. And we've got to be bold enough.
I want to get one more legal word from you about, so if I'm a male, I'm born, not assigned at birth. No one just said, assign him a male. If I'm born male and I want to buy life insurance first, the actuarial tables are different for men and women because women live longer than men. So if I'm born male and I become trans, I'm a trans woman now, identifying as a woman, and I want to go buy this life insurance, I'm still going to be considered male, aren't I? Because just because I dress differently or carry myself differently doesn't change my life expectancy as a biological male. Isn't that right?
That is right. And Title IX is clear that you shall not discriminate on the basis of sex. And it's clear what sex meant back then. Title IX came out.
Yeah, back then.
Right, back then.
We have to go back to the day when sex meant sex.
Right. But Title IX came about, there was a infamous judge in 71 that said something like, boys get the benefit, all the benefits of competing in sports. And it was that competition and the benefits and the health and the physical. Girls don't need that. That's what this judge said. And Congress, rightly so, reacted to that. And they passed Title IX and said you shall not discriminate on the basis of sex. They rejected that kind of backwards thinking. And here we are, 50 years later, and we're trying to go backwards again, right? People knew back then what a male and a female was. We know today what a male and a female was. And so I think eventually this is going to work its way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And I think it's clear. And the court's going to, they're going to end a lot of this stuff. And so we shouldn't have to pass these types of bills to protect our girls. But in the meantime, we need to, because justice is slow sometimes, and it's going to take a while to get that to come about.
I got to ask a question, and this is a legal question. Your attorney in the state of Minnesota is Keith Ellison. Attorney General.
Yeah.
Right?
Unfortunately, yeah.
Just confessing Muslim man, right? Who believes that women and men dress differently. Why is he okay with you allowing your son to come in the locker room with my little girl, but he is a Muslim professing that women and men dress differently? I don't understand that.
Well, that's
where it gets me, because I think people are doing this for political motivation to raise money, and they want to bow down to those that are funding them, and it comes back to the dollar. That's my 2 cents on it.
It's the same way that Joe Biden is a professing Catholic, and of course none of the values that he stands for is that of Catholicism or Christianity, for that matter, really. But to your point on profit, absolutely, especially on the medicalization side of things. Where you have what can only be described as unregulated child butchery, where you have doctors and physicians and surgeons and insurance companies, whatever it is, who look at these kids, these vulnerable children as young as 6, 7, 8 years old, as cash cows. Right? They see these kids as, look, it's a lifetime patient. They're here for life. We can make $70,000 to $100,000 per procedure. Forget abortions. Planned Parenthood, we don't need abortions anymore. We have this. This is so much better. It's so much more sustaining. And I believe, hopefully in the near future, we will look back and accurately call this what it is, which is the biggest medical scandal this world has ever seen.
I think it's so hard for people to accept that fact, that there are these surgeons that are, in a way, it's kind of evil, and in a way, it's kind of crazy. And you're thinking, wait a minute, this person went to medical school, and they had to be smart, and they had to have a moral compass. Well, no, they didn't.
Could you imagine walking into a hospital and saying, don't really feel like having a right arm today? Could you cut it off?
Well, I actually saw a woman interviewed who made herself blind because she felt guilty about being able to see. And so she threw chemicals in her own eyes to make herself blind. So this is a weird phenomenon that's hard to define.
They have mental health issues. I mean, no one wants to say it. That's the elephant in the room. People that think this way have a mental health issue, and we have now started to empower people that have mental health issues in our country. Think about the stuff we're talking about right now. This is sick stuff. And we don't call it sick anymore. And if we call it sick, we're racist or sexist or the other ist that you can come up with.
Homophobic, transphobic, all of those things, when in fact, I mean, to me, it would seem to be a more caring approach. As you mentioned, if you have someone who says, Mom, Dad, I think I was born in the wrong body, rather than say, you know what, then let's just go get your breasts removed and all. Well, how about, you know what? We're going to talk through this. We're going to get some counseling, and we're going to talk through this before we do anything drastic. Because, by the way, you're only 11, and maybe we shouldn't be doing to this.
And I think that's the important point here with the bill that we'll be hearing, and what we're trying to do in the state is we're talking about children. Right. It's one thing if adults are making different decisions, but we are talking about children. And we know their brains aren't fully developed, even though they don't like to hear that. But we know that. But we are then enabling them to make lifelong damaging decisions. And that pressure and that responsibility and weight is on us as adults. We have to protect children.
Amen.
Yeah. This is a topic that could be discussed for hours and hours. It has so many layers to it. But the basic thing that I think we should all insist upon is safety and fairness. And we have Title IX for that reason. And we have women's divisions in sports and a men's division in sports for that reason. One of the best examples I can give from personal experience is covering swimming at the Olympics. And at World Championships, they do what's called a mixed medley relay, where you have 2 women and 2 men. And they strategize very carefully because they know the women aren't as fast as the men. Even now, Katie Ledecky can beat a lot of men, but she can't beat Michael Phelps, right? She can't beat Olympic level men. So this strategy of which guy is going to swim which stroke, which one, because it's fact. And we've heard it from Serena Williams, from Martina Navratilova. We've heard it from enough people to know this isn't fair and it isn't safe. And you know plenty of people, Peyton McNabb and others, who have been hurt by this, physically hurt.
I could tell story after story after story after story that I've learned talking to female athletes, that I've learned talking to parents, even to coaches, even today that we heard in the state of Minnesota at the Capitol from girls. I mean, these are girls like 11, 12 years old who have already been forced to deal with this, to partake in this discussion. We talked to girls who were, I believe there was a couple middle schoolers, 14 years old, who were testifying before this bill. And it breaks my heart. It really does, that a middle school age girl who has so much to worry about. It's hard being a middle school age girl without having to deal with this, but having to get in front of a group of legislators, adults in these powerful positions, and make the case tearfully that you don't want boys in your locker room, or you don't want to share the court or the field or whatever competition setting it is with boys. It breaks my heart. But again, that's why I'm so grateful for all of the people here and their individual capacities and what they've been able to do to continue to of course, I mean, make a movement. That's really what we've done over the past few years. There's a movement now.
You have. And I don't want to gush over Riley, but but you really, it took a lot of courage and it took a lot of tenacity, and you stuck with it and you led a lot of people. So you need to be congratulated for that. And we're grateful to have you in Minnesota today. And for everyone here, what's the next step for this bill?
It is up on the House floor today at 3:30. We will try to pass that. We've been told that there won't be enough votes. All Republican votes are guaranteed on there, but there won't be any Democrats that are choosing to come over. I'm sorry.
Okay, so Minnesota, if you live in one of these Democrat districts, you really want to make your voice known to those people who vote against this. It's about fairness and safety.
Reach out to your legislature and let them know that this is a priority. Please vote yes on House File 12 to protect girls and ensure their safety and fairness in sports. It's very simple.
House File 12.
House File 12.
Everyone, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.